We are live. Okay. So, hello, everyone who's here live on the replay whenever you're catching this. It is Angie, Julie, and Natalie. And we're here today to bring our conscious conversations to you because we all learn together. And when we talk about the things that we are going through, we find not only relation, unity, we find solutions, we find permissions, we find ourselves reflected in each other, and we gain wisdom, and we're able to share. And so it's so important, and that's why we do this. So I'm Angie. I'm creator of this space of Journey to Soul, and I love bringing these conversations to the forefront. If I could spend my entire life just having these conversations, I would just that would be my heart, right? And yeah, so where was I going with this? So today we're going to be talking about teens with big emotions. So my friend Megan had talked about this. This is something that she's very challenged with and she's struggling with. And then I thought, yeah, and she was suggesting like maybe that's something you should talk about. And I hadn't thought about it because I don't have teens, right? Julie has close to teens, right? And Natalie has one getting close to teen. I guess I do. I have a 10-year-old. She's getting there, right? And what I realized then when I was thinking about bringing this topic, it's like, oh, we were all teenagers. We were all teenagers. So this is a relevant conversation for everyone. We've all been teenagers. We've moved through that transition, moving from teenage to adulthood, right? And with it, we may have picked up some beliefs and picked up some thought patterns, right? Oh, Rosalie, hello. Nice to have you here. And and Rosalie, I'm looking forward to hearing your wisdom on teens, actually, because I know that is definitely a period that you've gone through, right? And anyway, so I thought that was a really great conversation. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation today. And for any of you that don't know me, I am an intuitive spiritual guide, mentor, EFT tapping practitioner, and really I'm just a fellow human living a messy life and talking about it so that we can all rise together. And I have a 10-year-old and a 4-year-old, and motherhood cracked me wide open. So I love talking and exploring how we parent with all the things we're awakening to. So Julie, I'll let you introduce yourself, and then Natalie.
Wonderful. Hello, everyone. I'm Julie, and I have an just turned 11 and 12-year-old. So approaching those teen years and seeing changes. I am a wellness coach, and I am a quantum coach, and I am also a human being as well. So yeah, that's me, and I love having these conversations, and I'm so grateful to be here.
Oh, thank you.
Natalie. Hey guys, I'm Natalie. I work with homeschool families. I'm a homeschool mom myself, and I also have a homeschool guidebook that is coming out soon on Amazon. So if you want more details, you can, we're not on Facebook, but message me on Facebook or message Angie. She knows how to get in touch with me. And I also have a video series for homeschool parents who are doubting themselves and who are kind of doubting the whole homeschool experience, but want to stick with it too and don't really know where to go next. And I'm really excited about today's topic. I was actually getting some messages, so I just wrote down a couple notes as we were logging on. And I had a really interesting teenage experience. So I'm really just looking forward to diving in today. And I'm so happy that you're joining us too, Rosalie. Really interested in seeing your perspective on things as well.
Yeah, why don't you start then, Natalie, and share this experience with us?
Oh, yeah. So, I guess you would say it was, again, like the typical, like, rebel teen, misunderstood, all that stuff, which ties into really well with one of the messages that I was getting as, just before we got live here was there's this societal idea that teenagers are bad. They always get in trouble. No one wants to be a teenager. Even my daughter the other day, so she's 11 right now. She'll be 12 in the fall. And the other day she's like, I don't want to be a teenager. And I'm just like, where's this coming from? Right? Like I've been very much aware of my language lately, and I've never really said any comment out of turn about teenagers. So kind of surprised of where that came from, but peers and friends and stuff. But it just there's nothing wrong with teenagers. There's nothing wrong with any kind of age, right? It's like they're like the scapegoat of society, right? Oh, something's wrong with your family. Oh, it's because you have a teenager, oh, you're stressed out. Oh, it's because you have a teenager. Oh, you spend $1,000 on groceries every week because you have a teenager, right? Like it's just like this mental idea that permeates everything, right? And this has been going on for a long time. I don't know how many generations back this goes. Maybe just post-war generation. I'm not sure. So that's something I wanted to hit up on today. And also just that ties into, teens and their big emotions is just the very basic human need of being heard.
Yes.
And we get shut down at such an early age, like in babyhood, right? Your baby's crying and everyone's like, don't pick up your baby or let them cry it out or whatever. And hey, I don't judge parenting things I've seen at all. I've worked with lots of families. But there's a direct link here, guys, So, and there's the basic human need of just being heard, right? Of just, you go and you call your friend, Angie, I call you and I just need to vent. Well, that is just a basic human need of, I just need to vent. I don't need you to fix anything. I just need you to listen, right? Just to literally be there. So I find this is especially for teens, right? Because they're transitioning, they're still children, but they're children in adult bodies, right? And, the hormones are all wacky. You're going through puberty. Things are just you're like, what the heck is going on with my body, right? So then there's even that need of they just want to be heard, right? And sometimes that comes out. Some people may be like, oh, no, they don't want to listen to me. They don't want to have conversations with me and everything. But they do. But it just comes out in such a defensive way, right? They're so defensive. They have their walls up, which is kind of a combination of different things, including hormones, right?
Yeah.
I mean, for all you people watching that have been pregnant, hormones are not something to fuck with. Sorry about the language, but they just mess you up, right? So I find there's so many different layers, and sometimes it's just the really basic stuff that we got to remember.
I love this so much. You brought up so many things that were on my heart too to talk about, and I don't even know how we'll get to it there. We'll get to it. But the as soon as you said not heard, that's literally what came up for me before this call. So I went into a call at 4:00 and I was getting defensive about this call that I was going into, feeling like I had to prove myself and prove what I'm doing, and I knew that wasn't the intention of the person, though, right? So what I did was I took a half hour before the call and I sat down with myself and I journaled it out. And guess who showed up? My teenage self. And guess what intention I set before I went into that call was that this teenage version of myself that thinks that they're not heard is going to be heard in this call. And that's exactly what happened, right? When we set this intention, and that it had me thinking leading into our call was that's exactly it. As teenagers, we just want to be heard, but it's almost like teenagers just get discarded for their opinion because you don't know life. You're not an adult. You don't know. But they have thoughts, they have feelings, right? And so that really spoke to me about that. And, I think about Alice and I think about she's 10 and it feels like she's going on teenagehood, and she is. The hormones are starting already, right? And she often doesn't feel heard right now. And so I'm often looking at, so if we think about it, by the time a teenager becomes like 16, if they've had this 6 years of experience of not feeling heard, they start behaving like they're not heard. Right?
Exactly. You're reminding me of my own son as well, Grayson. He often feels not heard, and I find, well, I know if we think about our chakras and where they are, our voice, our throat, he's had throat, I mean, not serious issues, but he always, like, it seems to come up that he'll have like a cough or like a bark or something like that, and he's not really sick. And it always makes me think he's not being heard. Something in there is not coming out, and he's unable to express himself. And I think a lot of that is his brother, his older brother, is very easily able to express himself. And I feel like often he's almost comparing himself to his brother, not being able to be heard. So I do try to make a point to really listen to him and give him time to speak. But as we were talking about the other day, sometimes we're always cutting each other off, thinking, we know what the other person's going to say. And I think he's experienced that a lot during this time. So this is really reminding me again to, oh, hi, Leah, reminding me again to let his voice be heard, because as he gets older, it's definitely very important and very vital to feel heard. I'm thinking back to my own teenage years as well, and that was one of my biggest challenges, not feeling heard, and then looking for guidance at the same time and not finding that guidance because I didn't even feel heard in the first place. So yeah, it's definitely, I love that you guys are bringing this up. I'm going to be more mindful and conscious of that. Yeah, the connection with the throat and the voice, Rosalie, I've noticed that from the time he was young, very, very young. And it also reminds me of his brother speaking for him, being the younger child. Stephen often would speak for Grayson, and I would have to remind him, let Grayson speak. So I think there's that in there as well. Mm-hmm. Oh, Angie, you're on mute.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I was just going to say, sometimes with that too, I think, like the whole speaking for another person, it's like we do that as parents too. We try to speak for them, and we don't have patience for, like, not everybody, like Alice needs space to get the expression out, unless she's heated, and then she is able to get the expression out fast, right? But when she's not heated and she's just, it takes her a while to process what comes from her mind to coming out. And I don't give her the space, so I interrupt her all the time. Right. And that, that sends the message that we're not willing to stop and hear you.
And this is so important to be thinking of now before the teenage years. Like you said, if you've spent all these years feeling unheard, it's going to be more challenging to switch that dynamic, suddenly or even slowly over time.
Yeah. And then Rosalie had just written here, my daughter loved school until high school dynamic. She chose homeschool and then unschool. And I just gave her cocoon space, a very difficult life. And her creativity soared, but always has. And now she is quite successful managing a company and creating jewelry and having showings. Oh, that's so beautiful, Rosalie. Like that's the path I think I'm on with my daughter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that, Rosalie. That is just beautiful that you were able to give her that space and give her those options.
Yeah.
It's reminding me of my own teen years, and I actually found going into high school, I really enjoyed going into high school. Mm-hmm. It was much different than middle school, where there was more options of friends and more options of classes. But my home life was very challenging in not feeling heard. Like I feel like I was never heard or understood. And it led to a lot of challenging behaviors, I guess you could say, trying to be heard, trying to be seen, I guess, trying to be noticed.
Yeah, and that's what Natalie was talking about, right? This rebellious thing that teens go through. Instead of just shaming that they are rebellious, maybe we should be looking at what's creating the rebellious behavior.
Yeah.
Right. And looking at the mirrors, right? Because they are mirrors of us.
Mm-hmm.
So even with my children who, are still not quite teenagers, Stephen's interests are war and lots of weapons and killing and all of these type of things. And I don't want to tell him that he's wrong or that he shouldn't be interested in these things. And I try to think back to my childhood, and I was fascinated with true crime by the time I was his age, and I had all kinds of true crime books. And so we've been having this discussion more recently about the balance of the information that we're taking in, because I learned in my own experience that surrounding myself with just that negative, for lack of better terms, information, it affected my life pretty significantly. So I don't want to try and steer him away from this. He's passionate and excited about these things and learning about them, but then trying to find the balance as well and sharing with him how it affected me and how we can find that balance, because his interests are valid. And I know the information that I took in as well taught me many things. He's his own human being with his own interests. So it's also allowing that space, like Rosalie did, allowing that space for them to be human beings and have their experience while still guiding them. It's always that balance.
Isn't that it always? Yeah, you're right. It's always trying to find this balance.
Mm-hmm.
I think something too that you said, Natalie, that's so important is like this example you're talking about with your daughter, where she had this idea of like, I don't want to be a teenager, and it's like, where did that come from? And I think it's really worthy to talk about that. There is some serious programming that, like, in no better words, like hates on teenagers.
Yeah.
That creates fear around teenagers.
Yeah.
And imagine being that person. We felt that way, right?
Yeah. Like a really heavy pain body to use,
Yes.
like a Toll's word. Yeah, like a lot of hatred and anger, frustration again, like that rebellious, like you're walking on eggshells, right? Or like people are expecting you to act like a shit, so you're going to be a shit, right? Yeah. That's how I felt when I was a teenager. And then also just the example of, if there's, as a teenager, I had older siblings, right? So, you look at their behavior and it's like, oh, well, this is just expected, right? So you're seeing it and you're also hearing it from different, thank God we only had TV when I was a kid. You wanted a phone call, you had to go find the Bell payphone booth, right?
Oh my gosh, yes, find a quarter.
Yeah, or call collect. Send a message all in like that little recording. Anyways, but yeah, like this expectation, right? And it's part of it is what you're exposed to, but also part of it is like you said, Angie, the programming, and it's so deeply rooted, which is really odd, because I'm thinking this must have probably just started like in the 60s, which wasn't like the 1960s, which wasn't that long ago, right? Yeah, but like a really heavy programming.
Yeah. And this is reminding me making me think, how can we switch that? How can we change that perspective and that dynamic? What could we say about our teens instead, about the excitement of them learning new things, growing into their body and experiencing all of these changes? How can we put a positive spin and positive perspective on this? Because you're right, it's been so ingrained and so programmed. as I've mentioned many times before, I wanted to be a mother from the time I was born, I feel like. And I remember saying, but maybe we can just skip the teenage years. Maybe we can go from like 12 to 21, so even always wanting to be a mother, it was like, ooh, these years are going to be a challenge. It's just so programmed into us.
So, you expect it to be a challenge. So
right,
sorry, guys, guess
and
what?
then guess what?
It's going to be a challenge.
Right.
We create a challenge. And it feels like to skip, like imagine that energy. And Kyle uses this, right? Like they're yours from this age to this age. And it's like, feel the energy of that, guys. Like,
it's like cringy.
That's like not existent. Like you don't exist.
I don't want to be near you. I don't want to be part of your life.
Yeah, I don't want you to exist from this period to this period. This is such a beautiful, I'm going to put Rosalie's comment up here. Like, this is such a beautiful thing to reflect on. Teenagehood is a second toddlerhood. They're gaining another level of independence and separation and metamorphosis.
Yeah.
Right. So how can we honor that? Right. It's so beautiful.
Yeah.
And so that's what Julie's saying, right? That's what I hear you saying is like, how can we honor that? How can we change our languaging and model that for other moms?
Right. I love that perspective, Rosalie. That is beautiful. It is much better than, the challenging perspective. And you're right. It's another level of independence, separation, metamorphosis, and learning about themselves all in one. And how can we support that in a loving, nurturing way, like we would with our toddlers? Right? As they're learning the world, being open with that communication is so valuable. And even if we haven't had very great open communication before, it may be a little more challenging, but it's possible. Anything is possible. And when we change our perspective, our reality changes almost instantly. So, we are extremely powerful in what we choose. I love that we're having this conversation.
I know, me too. One of the things that, like I have the upcoming chakras class, and one of the things we talk about in the class is the energy centers are developed in 7-year cycles, and the teen years land in the solar plexus. And the solar plexus is where we gain our confidence, we gain our self-esteem, we gain our will, and project our will out into the world, right? But the world pushes that back at us at that age, right? And so the energy often gets distorted and disrupted, right? And then everything builds on top of that foundation, and that's a struggle, and that's what the healing work is. We come back now to these centers and these energies, right, that got disrupted, and so I just think, like, one of the things we can do, like my answer that came up, Julie, when you said that, is what can we do? One of the things that came to me right away was, well, I can start noticing, recognizing when I'm trying to project my adulthood onto my teen and have expectations of them to be like an adult. Like, you know what I mean? Like I see this. Okay, so one of the things, like, because I don't quite have a teen, but I can relate to this with Leah, or not Leah, with Alice. She's very anxious, very, very anxious. And that's really uncomfortable for me because I was a super anxious teen. And my experience really sucked, in terms of existing through that. Like, it really was painful. It was really painful. And you don't want that for your child. You don't want that pain. But in the end, what you do is you reject them because you're pushing away at them and you're uncomfortable with their anxiety. And you just want them to stop. Like, stop being anxious. You have nothing to be anxious for. And that really takes away, I don't know what I'm trying to say. Like, it takes away from them moving through the experience and learning that they can overcome it instead. Do you know what I mean? So what we can do is we meet them at their level. We meet them at the level of the solar plexus, and we remember that the energy is underneath it. And for those of you that aren't familiar with chakras, like, this is something to look into, but it's just understanding that the root chakra and the sacral chakra led to the opening of the solar plexus chakra. And if the solar plexus, if we're having trouble expressing and we're having trouble putting our will out in the world and sharing, putting our will out in the world and connecting too with being higher beings than just this human self, then we look back at the emotions. How did I learn emotions? How did I find safety in the world? I don't know if that made sense. I feel like I'm going off somewhere else, but
no, I like the way you said that, though, how it builds on one another, and that makes so much sense. If your foundations below are rocky, then as you build on top, eventually in your life cycle, you'll have to come back, or yes, you may or you may not come back to repairing those. But if we can, or integrating with them, but if we can, notice it as parents now, yes, and give them that space, to be who they are. And like you said, you don't have a reason to be anxious. You're a child, but they do have a reason. There is a reason, and it is valid, even though it's uncomfortable for us. And you speaking about Alice, I'm thinking about Grayson, and I'll see him, shaking his knee, really quickly, like an anxious type of shake, or being unable to express what he wants to say, maybe stuttering on his words, and just recognizing that being able to give him space and sit there with him in that is valuable. Yeah. We don't necessarily even need to fix it, but not shutting them away or trying to be away from them. Like we were saying, trying to be away from our teenagers. Like we don't want to experience that part. But part of creating those healthy foundations can be just allowing them to be who they are and move through these experiences.
And allowing them to feel safe. Like what you're saying, that's exactly it. Is like if from 0 to 7, their safety and security was rocked a little, there's no shame in it, right? You didn't know what you know now. You're awakening. You didn't know then what you know now. But now you might know, oh, they might not have felt super safe and secure from 0 to 7. So I can help them now. As a parent, like I can just help them feel safe and secure through their anxiety. Allow the anxiety to be, because it's a valid thing, right? Even if it doesn't make sense to you, it's a valid thing. But now you go back to the root chakra with them and like, it's okay. You are safe to feel these feelings.
Right. And even if you're not, like you said, familiar with the chakras and so on and so forth, it's just the experience of being able to be with them and allowing them to feel safe. Yes. We don't have to know everything behind it, but allowing them that space to be who they are and being loving and supporting. Just thinking about, the other day I was having such a challenging time, and I talked to you, Angie, about this, just being so grateful that Steve was able to sit with me. Yes. And let me just spew all of this stuff out without taking it on himself and getting upset and frustrated. I mean, I've been in the opposite seat where he's needed to let go. And sometimes it can be challenging not to take it on and not to personalize it, right? And it's the same with our children. But that gave me so much relief, just him being there. I didn't need anything more than that. And I mean, it's the same with our children. And I think the same with our teens. One of my biggest challenges as a teen, like we discussed, was not being heard. And I wanted to share everything. Like I wanted to tell my mom everything. I wanted to tell them everything, but they were like, whoa, I can't hear this. They didn't have the capacity to hear what I wanted to share with them. And I know it can be challenging, as a mother. My 12-year-old, he loves to talk, and he will share and share and share and share.
Nonstop if you let him.
Oh yes, nonstop. And I try to give him that space, but just the other day I let him know, I'm like, okay, I think I'm at my capacity right now about learning for this. So again, finding that balance, allowing to share, but then caring for ourselves,
having boundaries.
Well. And
having boundaries. Yeah.
We teach them boundaries by showing them what it looks like. and
Right.
doing it in a loving way, not just
in a
shutting them down.
respectful way. You know, you give them space and then you let them know, okay, like 1 more minute.
Yeah.
And then I'm at my max, right? And that's fine. And yeah, like there's no shame in it, right? And trying not to, what was coming in when you guys were talking is try not to rush them through what they're going through. So if they're anxious, don't rush them through, like don't like poo-poo it, or, you know, let them feel the emotion. Again, like they don't have to get sucked into it, because that's on like the opposite scale of like trying to rush through it. Like, we're humans, we were built to feel these emotions, but like teaching them also, okay, like, and also just being mindful of words like, okay, you're feeling anxious, not you are anxious, right?
Oh,
Like
I
you're
love that.
feeling anxious. And, you know, sometimes you feel anxious longer than, you know, if someone says a joke and you get the giggles might last like a minute. But sometimes when you feel anxious, you feel it for like an hour or two, or maybe even like 6 hours, right? So it kind of, so if your child jives with like the like conversations about energy and stuff, you can just say like some energies, like some emotions, anger and sadness, they're just kind of sludgy, right? They just like take longer to go through you, and that's okay. That's how they're made, right? Whereas other things are more quick, right? Like laughter and happiness, it's like boom, it's like a flash, right? And then it dissipates quicker. So it all kind of depends on what your kids are comfortable, like the language that they prefer. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, whatever language you use, like don't try to rush them through anything. And sometimes it's hard, right? Because, you know, sometimes they're going off on tangents, or they're saying stuff that you're like, I really don't need to hear this, but I feel like you just, it doesn't, at one point it's like, it doesn't matter what you need to hear, Mom, or if it makes you feel cringy, you're giving them that safe space, right? That safe space that no one offered you.
And we understand too, as parents, our role as we awaken is to understand that it's about us. If we're so uncomfortable with what they're doing, it's about us. And it's meant for us to go internally. The gift in it is for us to go internally. And you know, in my case, this phone conversation that I wanted to avoid was literally because I felt like I wouldn't be heard. And I switched that energy and went in with, here's the experience I'm having, and I think I'm in alignment with what I decided, you know. And in the end she was like, oh yeah, you're absolutely are, you know. But I made all kinds of stories in my head before headed. Well, my teenage self made all kinds of stories in her head, right? Moving into this. And in the end, I talked about that. And I talked about, there's this part of me coming up. And you know what she said to me was, what are you doing with that part of you? And I said, she's here and she's being heard. And I'm speaking on behalf of her and letting her know that it's okay that you feel that way, you know? And that's what we can do for our teens too. It's okay that you feel that way. My discomfort, I say this to Alice often, my discomfort has nothing to do with you.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, that you share that with her. And I've shared similar with my boys just recently, like what I'm experiencing right now. Like I said, I had a tough day the other day, and what I'm experiencing right now doesn't have to do with you. It's my own internal emotions that I'm processing and working through, because I think, you know, even younger, and I'm sure as teens, children can feel like they are causing the problem. They are the issue.
Yeah.
I know that was my whole teen experience, was I was the issue in my family. And I mean, it only makes sense with the way we've been programmed, right? But, you know, I remember hearing things like, everything was fine until you got here. And that just stuck in my brain, like, oh, I'm always causing an issue every time I appear and show up. But again, like I said, that's been so programmed, like we said, in society, that, you know, teens are an issue. Teens just cause problems. They're just a challenge, you know? We need to be switching that. And I love the way Rosalie explained it as another toddlerhood.
Yeah. And then she also wrote here, yes, I've said that too. Okay, I think my brain is full and needs a little break. My son is full of worldly knowledge. And they just want to share it.
Yeah.
Just like we did as teens.
Yes.
I did too. I was awakening when I was a teen. Like I was awakening to like what's going on out there in the world. And I was like, don't you want? And I realized really fast people didn't want to hear what I had to say.
Yes. Yes.
I didn't want to hear. And so I made it mean something about me too, that I make things worse. That was a core belief. I make things worse for people.
Yeah.
And Alice has that. Alice thinks that. Alice thinks that she's a problem. And I've been becoming very aware of that and seeing how we might be portraying that to her, like reflecting that back to her, but it's our own wounds, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's really important to be mindful of our words as parents. Not just because not just because of, we're constantly creating our reality, but also like kids hear a lot of stuff. Kids hear things that you don't even know that they're hearing. Like they're probably hearing this conversation right now, right? So, and there was a really great quote. I shared this like a long time ago. But it's something along the lines of, one of the things, when people try and like change their kids' behavior, one of the most simple ways to do that is talk. What like, let's say you're on the phone with like your parents or whatever, you're talking to someone, tell them something amazing about your kids. Right? Like say more positive things. So instead of like, oh, they're always fighting together or whatever, be like, oh, I don't know, whatever. Like something great, right? Something nice, or just something like, I don't want to say mundane, but just something normal, right? And because they hear, if you constantly hear, oh, you're picking on your brother, you're picking on your brother, you're picking on your brother. Well, you're just going to keep picking on your brother because that's what you hear, right? And it's so hard because as humans in the society, we're programmed to just like constantly narrate the crap in our lives. But we have a choice to change that, right? Because it's all a habit. And the first step is just be aware of it, right? Like the second you're going to complain about your child who's in their adolescence, just like recognize that. And be like, okay, instead of like complaining about, how late they stayed up or whatever, think of something else. And if you can't think of something nice, that's okay. We're all humans here. Just don't say anything. Right? Because you got to keep it real too,
Yeah.
But I think maybe just be like, oh, you know what? Like, I don't know, like whoever, your daughter, Alicia or something. And it's like, oh, Alicia has like such a great outfit on today. Or she did like this really cool thing with her hair, like whatever it is, right?
Help them seem visible. Like I see that as help them see that they are visible, because I will tell you, I'm guilty of this, and I feel it as I'm walking down the street or something. I will say hi to people as I pass by them, right? But when I come to a teen, I don't. I don't. And I think about how, and they don't make eye contact with me either. But imagine if even though they don't make eye contact with me, I say hi to them.
Yeah.
Oh, hi, Leah. I love you.
Yes. Would you like to say hi? Because Julie's saying hi to you.
Hi, love you. See you Friday.
Mama?
Yes, honey.
I keep on
Yeah, that is such a great point about having them be visible. I've actually been conscious of that before too, where I've realized, you know what, I feel like I'm not as welcoming with teens.
Yes.
Like it's like there's this barrier up, or so I have in the past, I don't know how many years now, tried to be more conscious, like you said, of also making eye contact with them and smiling at them. And I noticed how, they don't make eye contact as much. And it's probably, like you said, they don't feel seen. But we can start changing that, That's why we're having these conversations. We can start changing that. And as my children are getting older, when my children were younger, I remember at the school, the grade 7s and the grade 8s, my son's in grade 7 right now. And even with them, I was a little different, I feel. And I was conscious of it even then. So I tried a little bit more, but they almost made me nervous.
Yeah, right. It's like this weird programming where you're just uncomfortable around teenagers, which is crazy.
And you're kind of like, what is that? What is that? Because it's not really me.
I feel this is like super deep, ladies, and that we're just scratching the surface here, because there's something like weird. Like, where did this come from?
Right.
This need to like separate everybody from this certain group of children. They're still children.
Yeah. And as my children are getting older, I'm noticing how children they still are. These were 12 and 13 year olds. And, I saw them in fist fights and stuff like that. And, was hearing the narrative about at the school, how they could be dangerous and this and that. But they're just kids. They're just kids. And they deserve the same respect and eye contact and love and appreciation as anybody else.
Because that may be the fix. Just look at them in the eye and say hi.
Yeah.
That may just be all they need. We always overcomplicate things as humans.
Right. It might be enough to make them confident enough to project their will in that day. You know what I mean? Like,
they just want to be seen and heard, right? So when you look at them and you say hi, and they say hi back, or even if they don't say hi back,
and if they don't,
whatever.
that's okay.
You seen and you heard them, right?
Yes.
And you model it for your children too. That's the other piece. Like, it's not just about us doing it with our children. We have an opportunity to do it with all the teens in our lives, right? Asking them questions, asking them about their experience. What do they love? What do they, I think about my niece. Like, I acted different with my niece recently because she's 16 now. And then I was like, I got conscious of it real fast. I was like, oh, why am I being different? It's like, I love her. Like, what? My whole life I've been with her. Like, why am I acting different now? And so then I was like, I asked her questions. I just asked her a few questions.
I love that. Breaking that programming.
Yeah. And I feel it's so deeply rooted.
Yeah, it is.
And maybe it's also kind of tied into your own experience as a teenager, right?
Yes.
Because again, like I had a very, what I guess what people would call like a rebellious adolescent, not being understood, I'm the youngest. My oldest siblings had pretty much, I think, all moved out at that point. So kind of like almost like an only child too kind of dynamic. Yeah. So then you're also carrying that, right? Because,
Yeah, I was.
Yeah, it's so deeply, like, that's just weird. Like, as we're talking about it, I'm like, I feel
I
like
can feel the deepness
in my chest.
You know how we talk about, Julie, I know you talk about unplugging things out, right? I literally feel like that you go to unplug this one out and it's like deeply rooted in me.
It's like all like the gross bath hair.
It's like the plant that has the tap root that goes really deep down and you have to pull very carefully. Like, it feels like that.
Yeah, definitely. I'm feeling it in my gut, and
I am too.
Yeah, that's where you're feeling it too. It's reminding me, bringing me back to my teenhood, and I remember feeling so unseen and unheard that I thought people would forget me. Like my family members, when we'd have a family gathering, I honestly would think that they wouldn't know who I was. Like that's how unseen I felt and unheard I felt. I didn't want to say hi to them. I was uncomfortable to say hi to them because they wouldn't even know who I am. How weird is that?
And that's just the programming.
Yeah,
there's programming.
Logically, it makes no sense right now. And even then, logically, like it felt weird to me. But I remember feeling invisible. I remember feeling like I had a forgettable face. Like I was just, people wouldn't know who I was. And very, very interesting, uncomfortable to say hi to them. And that's that weird dynamic. That's been programmed in
And
there.
that's where we have to understand as the adults, I believe we need to understand that that is their experience. And so instead of waiting for them to come out and do something, we do it.
Yes.
We do it because they don't know. They don't know. They don't feel safe to do it.
Yeah.
That's what
Right.
I'm talking about, these other energy centers underneath. They don't feel safe to do it. If they don't have the safety, we can help them, show them that there is safety in the world.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah. And something so simple like including them in conversations, or
Yeah.
maybe even having, just a quick, like 5-minute conversation with them every day. And if it's one-sided, it's one-sided. But something that my husband and I do, and I think it would work really well with kids too, especially like, a bit older kids. But I mean, I do this with my 7-year-old too, is we'll share our highlight of the day, like the happiest thing that happened or the thing that we loved most about today, and the low point. So then for each of those, you don't necessarily, and this is what I love, you don't necessarily have to like dive into the details of it. Like, Angie, my low point was when you like, like you don't do that, but you're just like, I was in a situation where someone was, I don't know, being aggressive towards me. And what did I feel? I felt anger, or maybe I felt unsafe. Where did you feel it anywhere in your body? And what did you do about it? And sometimes what did you do about it was I did nothing, or I kept feeling like crap. Okay. Because then you're just, and so you do this for like the highlight of your day too, like the best part of your day. So you each take turns, right? And this creates so much things. First of all, this is creating space, and it's creating safety for them because you're just listening. Like that you're not fixing anything. And sometimes when I've been doing this with my husband for a few months, and I literally, and for those of you who know me, I literally have to like bite down my tongue because I want to fix it. I want to answer it, but that's not the point of the exercise. The point is just so that the other person's heard. So I think this would work really, really well with adolescents. And any kid at any age, but really like, especially when, we have these parents that are like, like Megan, who brought up this question, and, like her kids aren't 5 years old anymore. They're not 3, where it's easier to start this.
Yes.
But it's like, okay, but my kid's 16 now. Like, what do I do now? Well, just start with that. And if they don't want to participate, that's okay. But make it like a rule, like, okay, we sit on this couch, or maybe sit on the bed, or wherever, like a space that they feel safe in. Or maybe outside, right? Like a more neutral place. And then you each take a turn. And maybe Angie, in this example, maybe you're the teenager and you're like, this is lame, Mom, or whatever.
I was going to bring that up.
That's okay. You just ask me the question, right? You just ask me what my best part of the day was, and I'll answer, and I'll ask you. And if you don't want to answer, that's okay, And again, because don't they will.
Yes, and we have to continue.
You do this every day. And you don't be like, no, you have to participate. Don't do that, because then that just is going to bite you in the ass, and that's not going to work. And if they just sit there with them. Because sometimes, again, like you brought this up earlier, Angie, where your eldest daughter takes some time to answer, right? So just sit there and zip your mouth, okay?
Yes.
Don't push them, because when people need to, for instance, when people need time, we're used to people speaking very, very quickly. But when we need time, when someone needs time to articulate, or even just putting the words together before they say it, getting the message through, you're not in their body. Maybe they're guides or angels, higher self, wisdom, whatever, intuitive, infinite intelligence, however you want to label it. Maybe they're getting the message through.
Yes.
And they just need space to translate that, right? Or translate their emotions. Maybe it's not some divine message. It's not always a divine message. But just so when you're doing this exercise, I strongly recommend anyone with kids do this. When you ask, what was the highlight of your day, and when even when you're like, what was the low point of your day? And if it's a couple minutes, because even 30 seconds of silence is super awkward for kids, right?
It feels long.
Literally, just bite your tongue. Don't say anything, even if it takes them 5 minutes to answer. If they're still sitting there or if they're still in the same room, just wait.
Another thing I would add to that too is like we also will like discount what they say. Like they finally might say something and they might say like, well, the high part of their day was this, and you think they had a better part of the day. Sometimes, do you know what I mean? And you'll jump in, but what about,
you're surprised.
Did you forget about this? Like, don't do that. Refrain, right? Like refrain from trying to step in and say, oh no, you had a better part of your day. Let them decide.
Yeah.
Even if you don't like it. Even if they say, I don't remember. That drives me nuts with my daughter. She just says, I don't remember. It's like an automatic reaction. She just says, I don't remember.
Yeah.
And I get
just
really
don't
mad.
respond. Just sit there.
Yeah.
I absolutely love that you brought this up. And this is something that I've shared with my family for a long time. We've done our best and worst for a long time at bedtime and at dinner time. And when there's just just wanting to have that communication with one another. And it also reminded me of my sister sharing about her teens. Like one of them likes to go for a drive to talk, but she said her son can take hours before he even says anything. Like, so they'll be driving and driving, but she just gives him that space and eventually it does come out.
Beautiful. And so maybe we have to get crafty like that too and find ways that become comfortable for us to allow them the space. Maybe it's going for a drive because maybe it's hard to give them the space sitting at a table.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So maybe that's not the place for you to do it, and that's okay. Maybe you go for a walk. Maybe you take them out and eat, go for a snack, and then that's where they talk. Like try different places. Another thing I wanted to bring up is if this is new to your teen, you haven't done this before, they're going to be resistant because they're going to be like, why the hell's mom acting like this now? Like, what the hell is this, right? So you're going to have patience, and you're going to have and just know that if you're giving them space, it'll start to come out. It will. And I'm saying this to myself as much as I'm saying it to you.
Aren't we always?
Yeah.
Aren't we always, right?
We are.
And something that was coming in as you were saying that, Angie, of, their reaction, be prepared for that, but also be prepared for the unexpected. Like maybe the wall will come down, guys. Like if my parents did this for me when I was 16, like I might have just been, like, like emotionally vomiting for the entire weekend.
Yeah.
Because maybe that's just the nudge that they need, right? And because we're awakening, we're becoming aware, it's also having a ripple effect, and you don't know what will be like that little extra nudge, that little extra like light that comes into them. And maybe it won't happen for like thousands of years, but maybe it'll happen in this, like you just kind of be open to anything. And just whatever surprises you, keep your mouth shut. I feel like as parents, and I love talking too. I mean, you guys know me really well, but it's like just keep it shut, because remember, the most basic human need, like I said at the beginning of this broadcast, is to be heard. Is to be heard.
Yeah, absolutely. Rosalie says, I was driving, but I do this. Highlight the worst, highlight and worst, or just something that stood out for you. Yeah, even that. What stood out for you in your day?
Yeah. I like that.
Not something as emotional as like the best and the worst, right?
Yeah.
Like what stood out for you.
Because that's actually something that turns Alice off is like it is an emotional thing, and she doesn't like to She doesn't like to dive deep, right? Like, so it's just like, hey, what do you remember from today?
Yeah. I love that. I'm going to add that in for sure.
Thank you, Rosalie. That's really great.
Yeah. And there's no wrong answer, right? You're like, oh, okay.
Yeah, sometimes we have a whole bunch of bests or a whole bunch of worsts, or, you know, sometimes we'll make complete lists. We'll be like, well, there was this and that and this and that. You know, as we've practiced this over the years, it seems to expand.
Yeah.
So it's really making me feel good that we have that open communication already. And like you said, even if it hasn't started yet, it can start at any time. And actually, I have my teenage niece coming over shortly, so I think I'm going to ask her about her day.
Oh, amazing!
Yeah,
that's amazing, and that's the invitation, right? How can we think of the teens in your life right now? Whether they're your children or just teens around you, maybe at the neighbor.
Maybe at work or anywhere,
at work,
right?
Neighbor. How can you be more conscious with them?
How can you flip the script, right? Instead of walking and be like, oh God, there's a group of teenagers, just walk by and be like, hey guys, how's it going?
Yeah. What are you guys all doing?
Or just smile at them, you know, and and what are you feeling as you're walking by them, right? Are you feeling anxious and fake smiling? What's your intention, right?
And just get curious about it.
Yeah.
Get curious
if
about
you
it.
want to bring light to this heavy teen programming, well then be that light as you were just walking through the park, right?
Yes. Helping them to be seen and heard, right? And even if they're not ready for it, right? Just that smile and that eye contact is just enough.
Yeah.
And even as teens, if I look back at my teen years, even though I didn't feel seen and heard, there are some key people that I remember because I felt seen and heard by them.
Mm-hmm.
You know? And so, we're coming to the end of this. So, man, we could dive so deep. There's so much more we could talk about in here. But what I wanted to share, and I'm gonna shamelessly plug myself right now because I have 2 really valuable masterclasses coming up, and actually part of the vision of these masterclasses, they're my signature masterclasses, is I want teens to learn this information. So if you know teens in your life, I'm doing one on understanding our energy centers, which is our chakras, and understanding our emotions. And both of these, I believe, are pillars to understanding how we interact with energy in this world, and how we can start to embrace that we are energetic beings, right? And so I think it's I want to bring that to teens actually, and I've taught teens the chakras, and it's amazing how much they're receptive to it. They want to learn this stuff. They it's something cool and new, and it's not something that the world is telling them.
Yeah, it's outside of the box, right? And I think that's what teenagers crave.
Yes. And so, the great thing, parents too, is it's the exchange is $44 Canadian, and you get to bring a friend. And so my friend brought her daughter, right, as her guest last time. And so, I'm just going to put it out there. If you know anybody that is interested in learning about that, I'm hosting the chakra one this Saturday on the 11th at 3 p.m. And you can find that in the events in this group. If you're watching this on YouTube, because sometimes I put these videos on YouTube, I will include the information down below. Anyway, I just wanted to share that because our conversation has inspired me to include a little more content about that in the program, in the masterclass.
Yeah.
I love that. I know those classes will be so valuable, and there's so much wonderful information. I'm excited.
I was just looking at it before this.
Oh.
It really is. It's beautiful. It's something that I know I'll be teaching forever because it's important for humanity.
Mm-hmm. That's just something important to revisit, right? Because we're always cycling up.
Yeah,
right?
it's and our point of view
it's the same content, perhaps, but the
Yes.
lesson within is different.
I
right?
love that you said that because I got
Yeah.
that feedback from a participant a year ago. I had reached out to her about something and she was like, "Oh, I don't remember it, like I was in a bad place that time." So I told her, I said, "I'd sent you a recording, so if you wanted to tune back into it, here's the name of the class." And she did. She went back and watched it again and looked at the PDF, and she was like, she messaged me to thank me because she's like, even a year later, it's supporting me.
Yeah.
She's like, I saw
Amazing.
something I needed to know today, and I was like, oh, yeah.
It's the same thing with our children, right?
Yeah.
No
And
matter
once
how
you
old
take,
they are.
yes, and once you take the master class with me, you get access to it. You get to come live every time I run it, right?
Mhm.
And so that's another beautiful thing too.
That's incredible. What a beautiful gift. I love
Yeah.
it. Because
Yeah.
you definitely can learn, you experience it from a different perspective each time, and there's information in there for you that will be valuable each time.
Yeah, because we're interacting with energy in every now moment.
Yeah.
What a great conversation.
This
Megan.
was a great episode. And again, like I feel like we should probably revisit all the topics that we've had, right?
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
But
We can revolve through them
this
again.
one just felt like, whoa, like again, like that plug, right? Like there's so much more.
And there's so much more we can do.
Yeah.
There's so much more we can do to flip the script on this one.
Yeah. So let us know, guys, if you have a teenage in your life, and you have like maybe a specific experience you want to share. If you have a question, message Angie, and we'll deep dive into it because that's what we love to do.
We will. And I invite that actually. If people share their experience, we can do another chat on that.
Because odds are you're going through it or you experienced it. A lot of other people have too. So please don't be shy.
Yeah. All right. Oh, ladies, I love you so much.
Oh, I love you guys too. Thank you so much.
much.
Thank you, Rosalie, for tuning in
Thank
and
you,
participating.
Lovely having you here, Rosalie.
All right. I love you guys. Have a great evening.
Love you. You too.
Okay. Bye-bye.